40 years. A lifetime compressed into the weight of a single object. A watch. Not just any watch, but the one his father had given him the night before he left for Juilliard. The one Robin Williams thought he'd lost forever in 1976, in a cramped New York apartment that smelled of hope and ramen noodles. The one that carried his father's last words. "Time is the only thing you can't get back, son. Use it wisely." Robin Williams stood on stage at the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles, mid-joke, the audience riding the wave of his manic energy. And then something happened that no one, not even Robin himself, could have scripted. A man from the back of the room stood up. Middle-aged, unremarkable, holding something small in his hand. Security moved toward him, but Robin raised his hand. "Stop. Let him speak." The man walked slowly down the aisle. The audience fell silent. Robin's smile faded, replaced by something else. Curiosity. Recognition. Fear. The man reached the stage, climbed the stairs without permission, without introduction, and extended his hand. In his palm, glinting under the stage lights, was a watch. An old Timex with a scratched face and a worn leather band. Robin's breath caught. His hand trembled as he reached for it. And in that moment, everything stopped. The laughter, the performance, the mask he'd worn for decades. What remained was just a man, holding a piece of his past, trying not to break. But this moment didn't begin on that stage. It began 40 years earlier, in a different life, with a different Robin. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful moment of Robin's life is still ahead. New York City, 1976. Robin Williams was 25 years old, broke, hungry, and terrified. Juilliard had accepted him. His dream was real. But his father, Robert Williams, was dying. Lung cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months. Robin knew he had to choose, stay with his father or chase his future. The night before Robin left for New York, his father called him into the living room. Robert sat in his worn leather chair, the same one where he'd read the newspaper every morning for 30 years. He looked smaller than Robin remembered. Fragile. Human. "Come here, kid," Robert said, his voice raspy from the illness. Robin sat on the floor beside him, like he had when he was a boy. Robert reached into his pocket and pulled out a watch. It was nothing fancy. A Timex his own father had given him in 1945, when he returned from the war. Robert fastened it around Robin's wrist. "Time is the only thing you can't get back, son," Robert said. "Use it wisely. Make it count. Don't waste it on regret." Robin looked at the watch. The second hand ticked steadily, indifferent to the weight of the moment. He wanted to say something profound, something worthy of his father's gift. But all he could manage was, "I'll make you proud, Dad." Robert smiled. "You already have." 3 months later, Robert Williams was gone. And 6 months after that, in a haze of grief and exhaustion, Robin lost the watch. He searched everywhere. His apartment, the theater, the subway. It was gone. And with it, the last tangible connection to his father. Robin never spoke about the watch. Not in interviews, not to friends, not even to his family. It was a wound too private, too sacred to expose. Until that night at the Laugh Factory. Back on stage, Robin held the watch in his hand, staring at it like it was a ghost made solid. The man who'd returned it stood beside him, quiet, respectful, waiting. "Where?" Robin's voice was barely a whisper. "Where did you find this?" The man cleared his throat. "My father was a pawnshop owner in Brooklyn. He bought it in 1977 from a desperate kid who needed $40. My dad never sold it. He said there was something about it. Something that felt important. When he passed away last year, I found it in his desk. There was a note attached. This belongs to someone who needs it more than I do. If you ever find him, give it back." Robin's hands were shaking. "How did you know it was mine?" The man smiled. "Your father's initials. RFW Robert Franklin Williams. I googled it. Found an old article about you, about Juilliard, about your father. I knew it had to be yours." The audience sat in absolute silence. Some were crying. Others held their breath, afraid to break the spell. Robin turned to the man. "What's your name?" "David. David Kessler." Robin extended his hand. "Thank you, David. You have no idea what this means." David shook his hand. "I think I do, Mr. Williams. My father told me once that the things we lose never really leave us. They wait. And when the time is right, they find their way home." Robin stopped mid-sentence. The audience went silent. What came next would be something no one had ever seen from him before. Robin looked down at the watch. The second hand was still ticking, 40 years later, as steady and indifferent as the day his father gave it to him. He fastened it around his wrist. It fit perfectly, as if no time had passed at all. He turned to the audience. For the first time in his career, Robin Williams stood on stage without a joke, without a character, without a shield. Just himself. "My father gave me this watch the night before I left for Juilliard," Robin said, his voice thick with emotion. "He told me time was the only thing you can't get back. And I lost it. I lost the one thing he asked me to protect. I spent 40 years thinking I'd failed him. That I'd wasted his gift." He paused, wiping his eyes. The audience was transfixed. "But I realize now. I didn't lose it. It was waiting. Waiting for the moment I needed it most. Waiting to remind me that time isn't about the past. It's about what you do with the present. And my father knew that. He always knew that." Robin looked at David. "Your father saved this. He kept it safe. And you brought it home. That's not coincidence. That's grace." The audience erupted. Not in laughter, but in something deeper. Recognition. Connection. A shared understanding that some moments transcend entertainment and touch something eternal. David stepped forward. "Mr. Williams, my father loved your work. He said you had a gift for making people feel less alone. I think he'd want you to know that." Robin pulled David into an embrace. The two men stood there, strangers bound by an invisible thread of loss and love, while the audience bore witness to something sacred. Backstage, Robin made a promise no one knew about. But this was the moment that changed him forever, and no one saw it coming. After the show, Robin sat alone in his dressing room, the watch on his wrist, the second hand ticking. He thought about his father. About the years he'd spent running, performing, hiding behind characters because the real Robin felt too fragile, too broken to expose. He thought about David's father, a man he'd never met, who'd held on to a stranger's watch for 40 years because it felt important. A man who understood that some things are worth protecting, even when you don't fully understand why. Robin picked up his phone. He called his son, "Zach? Dad? You okay? It's late." "I'm okay, kid. Better than okay. I wanted to tell you something. Time is the only thing you can't get back. So I'm not wasting any more of it. I love you. And I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for all the times I wasn't there." There was silence on the other end. Then Zach's voice, cracking with emotion. "I love you too, Dad." Robin hung up. He looked at the watch. The second hand kept moving, relentless and patient. And for the first time in 40 years, Robin Williams felt like he was using his time wisely. The next morning, Robin called David. "I want to do something," Robin said. "Your father saved this watch. I want to honor that. Let's start a foundation. For kids who've lost parents. We'll call it Time Well Spent. We'll help them find their own way to hold on to what matters." David was silent for a moment. Then he said, "My father would have loved that." And so they did. The foundation launched 6 months later. It provided grief counseling, scholarships, and mentorship for children who'd lost parents. Robin donated his time, his money, and his voice. He showed up. Not as a celebrity, but as a man who understood loss. The watch never left his wrist again. In interviews, people would notice it. "What's the story behind the watch?" they'd ask. And Robin would smile, that soft, genuine smile that wasn't part of any performance. "It's a reminder," he'd say, "that the things we lose are never really gone. They're just waiting for us to be ready to find them again." Years later, after Robin's death, David Kessler was asked about that night. About the moment he returned the watch. He said, "I don't think I gave Robin Williams anything back. I think his father did. Through me, through my father, through 40 years of patience." Some things are meant to find their way home. And when they do, they change everything. The watch is now in the Smithsonian, part of an exhibit on Robin Williams' life and legacy. Next to it is a plaque that reads, "Time is the only thing you can't get back. Use it wisely. Robert F. Williams." But the real legacy isn't the watch. It's the foundation. It's the thousands of kids who found hope in their darkest moments. It's the reminder that loss doesn't have to be the end of the story. Sometimes it's just the beginning. Share and subscribe, so his story will never be forgotten. Robin Williams never spoke publicly about what that watch meant to him beyond that night. But those who knew him said he changed after it was returned. He became softer, more present, less afraid of silence. In his final years, Robin would sometimes sit alone, staring at the watch, listening to the tick of the second hand. His wife once asked him what he was thinking. "I'm thinking about my father," Robin said. "About how he knew something I didn't. That time isn't about holding on. It's about letting go at the right moment. And trusting that what's meant for you will always find its way back." She asked him if he believed that. Robin looked at her, his eyes clear and calm. "I'm wearing the proof. The night Robin Williams died, the watch stopped. No one touched it. No one wounded it. It simply stopped, as if its work was done. As if it had kept time long enough." David Kessler attended the funeral. He didn't speak. He simply stood in the back, tears streaming down his face, knowing that he'd been part of something bigger than himself. A thread in a tapestry he'd never fully understand. After the service, Robin's son, Zach, approached him. "Thank you," Zach said, "for giving him that moment. For giving us more time with the version of him that wasn't afraid anymore." David nodded. "It was never mine to keep. It was always his. I just helped it find its way home." And maybe that's the lesson. Maybe that's what Robin's father was trying to tell him all those years ago. Time isn't something you own. It's something you borrow. And the only way to use it wisely is to share it. To give it to the people who need it. To trust that when you let go, the things that matter will always return. Robin Williams taught the world to laugh. But in that moment at the Laugh Factory, holding a watch that had traveled 40 years to find him, he taught us something deeper. That grace is real. That loss is not the end. That time, when used wisely, is the greatest gift we can give and receive. The watch ticks no more. But the lesson endures. Time is the only thing you can't get back. So use it wisely. Make it count. And when you lose something precious, don't give up hope. Because sometimes, just sometimes, it's out there waiting. Waiting for the moment you're finally ready to hold it again. In the years that followed Robin's death, the foundation he started with David continued to grow. Thousands of children found solace in its programs. They learned that grief doesn't have to destroy you. That loss can be transformed into purpose. That time, even when it feels stolen, can be reclaimed through meaning. One young girl, whose mother had died when she was 8, wrote a letter to the foundation. "I thought time was my enemy," she wrote. "Every birthday without my mom felt like another piece of me disappearing. But this program taught me that time is actually my ally. Every year I grow is another year I get to honor her. Another year I get to become the person she hoped I'd be." David Kessler kept that letter. He read it at every fundraising event, his voice breaking at the same line every time. "Time is actually my ally. That's what Robin understood," David would say. "That time isn't about what you've lost. It's about what you do with what remains. The watch itself became a pilgrimage site at the Smithsonian. People would stand before it, some for minutes, some for hours. They'd stare at the frozen hands, trapped at 11:47, the moment Robin's heart stopped. And they'd think about their own losses, their own regrets, their own watches, ticking away while they hesitated to say what mattered. A museum guard once observed that people cried more at that watch than at any other exhibit in the building. It's not just about Robin Williams, the guard said. It's about everyone they've lost. Everyone they wish they'd had more time with. That watch holds everyone's grief. But it also holds everyone's hope. Because if a watch can find its way home after 40 years, then maybe anything can. Maybe the words we never said can still be spoken. Maybe the love we thought was gone forever is just waiting for us to be ready to feel it again. Robin's final interview, recorded weeks before his death, contained a moment that now feels prophetic. The interviewer asked him what he'd learned in his years in Hollywood. Robin touched the watch on his wrist, smiled that gentle smile, and said, "I learned that nothing is ever truly lost. It's just traveling, taking the long way home. And when it arrives, if you're paying attention, if you're present, it changes everything. The trick is to stay present, to keep your door open, to trust that what's meant for you will find you." The interviewer asked if he was talking about the watch. Robin shook his head. "I'm talking about everything. Love, purpose, peace. They're all out there, traveling toward us. And sometimes they arrive in the most unexpected ways. In the hands of a stranger. In a moment of silence. In the space between laughter and tears." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "That's where the real magic lives. Not in the performance. In the pause." Those were among his last recorded words. A final gift from a man who spent his life making others laugh but understood, in the end, that the deepest connection happens in silence. In presence. In the willingness to stop performing and just be.